Good evening, everyone. Before we start our meeting tonight in these unprecedented times, I'd like to make a statement. So tonight, as we hold our regular City Council meeting, those viewing from home will notice a few changes we've made in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Based on orders from the Cass County Health Department, State Department of Health and Human Services, and the CDC's recommendations, the council and staff are practicing responsible social distancing. Members of the City Council will be participating via telephone as provided in RSMO 610.020, Parent 1. Because of the meeting being held by conference call, council members will need to announce themselves before they speak. Votes will also be taken as a roll call vote to properly record all votes. We are also limiting the number of people in attendance tonight to fewer than 10 and encouraging each individual in attendance to remain a safe 6 feet apart during this meeting as recommended by the CDC. To discourage anyone from going against the county and state's orders to stay home, I am also encouraging the City Council to amend tonight's agenda to remove the public comment portion at the end of the meeting. There are no public hearings scheduled for this evening's agenda. If those watching at home wish to have a comment to reach council members, please email Assistant City Manager Mike Eakey at mekey@raymore.com, and those comments will be forwarded to the City Clerk for distribution to the council. Now, welcome this evening, and I'd like to open the Raymore City Council regular meeting for Monday, March the 23rd. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber. Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands, nation under God, full liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman.
Mr. Holman.
Yes, sir. In light of the orders for our residents to stay at home by the county, state, and Centers for Disease Control, I move that we amend tonight's agenda to remove item 11, public comments. Additionally, I move that we add Bill 3539, authorizing the mayor to declare a state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 virus as the first item of new business tonight.
Thank you. A motion's been made to call for an amended agenda. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Kevin Barber.
Mr. Barber? Do you second that motion?
I second that motion.
Thank you. The motion's been made and seconded to amend tonight's agenda to disclude public comments at the end and to include an amended agenda to have the authorization of the mayor to declare a state of emergency, Bill 3539, as the first item under new business. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I realize the importance of this issue, and I feel that it is necessary should it be needed. However, I want everyone to remember that, as you stated in yourself, in these unprecedented times, we have to take measures to save lives and to ensure the public health. However, this must be a measure that cannot be taken lightly, as it will have a drastic effect upon our citizens and others, including their jobs and their livelihood and our economic future. I trust you, sir, with all my heart to make the right decision should that time come.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Yes.
Councilmember Barber.
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Circo.
Yes.
Councilmember Holman.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you all. The item passes with a unanimous vote. We'll now move on to staff reports. Mr. Furborn.
Thank you, sir. In light of the current situation, the staff reports are as written and received by the council within your packets. Staff is available for any questions, and I would remind the council that next Monday night, being the 5th Monday night of the month, there will be no work session that evening.
Thank you, Mr. Furborn. If anyone has any comments at this time or any questions of the staff, the few that are here, I would entertain that. If not, we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has one item on the agenda tonight, and that is the City Council meetings of March 9th, 2020. Is there a motion to dispose of this item?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman.
I move, sir, that we approve the consent agenda as presented to us to include item A, the City Council minutes from the March 9th, 2020 meeting of the Raymore City Council.
Thank you. A motion has been made to approve. Is there a second?
Councilmember Barber,
Mr. Barber.
that motion?
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Yes.
Councilmember Barber.
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Circo.
Yes.
Councilmember Holman.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you. All the motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the first reading of 3528 by title only?
By title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for $15,000 with Brenton Electric Company for the replacement of trail lights in the Arboretum at Memorial Park.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. She caught me there. I said first reading. I meant second. She caught it and said second reading. Is there a motion to dispose of this item?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman.
I move, sir, that we approve Bill 3528, award of contract Memorial Park Arboretum light replacement.
Thank you. The motion has been made to approve the second reading of Bill 3528. Is there a second?
Councilmember Barber,
Mr. Barber.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3528. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Yes.
Councilmember Barber.
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Circo.
Yes.
Councilmember Holman.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you all. The motion carries with a unanimous vote, 8-0. We'll now move on to the second item. Could I, under unfinished business, could I please have the second reading of Bill 3531 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3531 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with J.M. Fahey Construction Company for the Westgate Drive Extension Project, City Project Number 20-242-201, in the amount of $597,360.55, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a motion to dispose of this item?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman?
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3531, award of contract Westgate Drive Extension Project.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Mr. Barber?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3531, an extremely important part of our economic growth here, the Westgate Drive Extension Project. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Yes.
Councilmember Barber. Councilmember Barber.
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Circo.
Yes.
Councilmember Holman.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to new business. And as the agenda had been amended at the first of our meeting, I will request the first reading of Bill 3539 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3539 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to declare a state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 virus and to institute the applicable provisions of Chapter 240 of the Raymore Code of Ordinances and Chapter 44 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, and declaring this bill as an emergency.
Thank you. Could I have a staff report, Mr. Fuhrborn?
Thank you, sir. The purpose of this bill is to support the emergency order that was issued by the county today. It is giving you the authority under Chapter 240 of the Raymore Code to implement whatever actions are necessary in response to the emergency situation. And specifically, as we have been discussing today, because the order was actually issued at the county level, it will give you the opportunity tomorrow to issue a declaration of emergency within the city limits in support of the county order. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you. Any questions of staff before we move forward with this?
Tom Circo here.
Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. was curious, as we go forward with this, of course, unprecedented times, work with the county, because the many outweigh the few, we need to contain this. I was curious when I talked to Representative Hafner today, Mike and I, as they wait on influx of financial grants to the state from the government, the federal government, as they work on these amendments that they're working on, when any kind in the future financial gains come to the state and they go to the spread to the cities, my main concern would be what we can do for that small percent, 1 or 2% of private entities, whether there be barbershops, hair salons, small gyms, entities that will be down for a month and will have no opportunity to have any financial recourses at all, which would be very direct and heavy on those people because they don't have a way to make any money at all once they close these things down. And as they work on this process through the federal government for grants and money, which I really look forward to that will happen, when they come to the city level, we could create a small list of some of these small business owners that we have on file who have license of these types of entities that will be heavily involved and very smited financially over this period of time, to make sure they're maybe on a front line list, that when the state comes down to us and our representatives come to us and say, we have this money for your city for this that they're giving to these people now because of the small business. If we can create some kind of a list that shows a priority of these small 1 or 2% of business that within our city that are going to be drastically impounded and impacted by this financially because there's no way of recourse of finances. Something to get the money to them priority first as money comes in, as they work through this in the future. He thought it was a great idea, and he'd be glad to sit down and work with you guys and talk with you if there's any kind of list he can create just to kind of get ahead of it for some of these really small businesses that will be impacted so bad that they might not recover. And at least with the finances, they can help them get on their feet quicker, that they might be able to recover, and when an extra week or two would put them to the point where they could not. So just something, an idea we were throwing around today about making a list off our business owners who have, of course, licenses so we know who they are. That might be in that general small population group that are financially going to be strapped 100% of no way to make a financial gain once they close their doors for a month.
Well, that would have actually been a good statement to make during council members' comments, but because I'm not sure it deals with this particular ordinance that we're requesting here tonight. It's a great idea, and I'm sure the people around the table have taken enough notes to make sure that that is one of the items that we discuss at a later date. But right now, we're just dealing with the authorization of the declaration of a state of emergency by the mayor. But I appreciate your statement.
I apologize. Actually, we got past that. I'm sorry. We got past this, and I didn't miss that opportunity. I apologize. So, again, I'm sorry. I meant to do that, but I kind of got that, Mr. Holman presented that first on, and I wasn't prepared on my notes here to take that on and answer important questions. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. We understand your position, sir, and can appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. So we haven't had a motion yet, have we, to accept the first reading? Okay. So I would entertain a motion to dispose of the first reading of this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3539, authorizing the mayor to declare a state of emergency.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Kevin Barber.
Mr. Barber.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, sir. There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3539. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. As I stated earlier, I believe this is a necessary item, and I believe, that it's something that we have to do as a council to vest you with that power should it need to be done. I think that the county ordinance has probably covered most everything, and I think that operationally most businesses that are going to close have closed, and the ones that are allowed to stay open for necessities such as groceries and gas and that kind of thing are going to remain open because we have to have them. But we also have to vest you with this authority and trust you, sir, on your honor that you will take this to heart and only invoke it as far as operations go if absolutely necessary. And again, I think that the county's kind of overshadowed this with their piece, but I still think this is a necessary piece of legislation we need to put through tonight so that you have that power as these things develop rapidly. And we don't have the time for us to go back and do even an emergency meeting to vest you with that authority. So I think it's important that we do it tonight.
Thank you, sir. And as you'll see, if we pass the first reading and we move to the second reading where it's read in its entirety, you will see that it is a 30-day grant, or at least out to April the 30th, and no further than that. So it will be dealing specifically with this state of emergency. So are there any other comments?
Yeah, Tom Circle here, Councilman Circle, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Circo.
As we approve this and get this underway on this 30-day, by chance, I'd say very rare, but by chance this thing should clear up in 2 or 3 weeks, even though we extend it for 30 days. Is there a time where we could actually go back into emergency meeting and retract that if necessary? By any chance it would clear up sooner than the 4 weeks?
I see that hold on a second.
I can actually answer this one.
Okay.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is very possible that, and even the county mentioned this this morning in our conference call with them, that if by chance at some point that we would get to a point where they were removing their order, we would immediately act, even if it took a special meeting to remove this, or we would encourage the council to remove this particular authorization to the mayor to do these things.
Thank you, Mr. Furborn. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, I would ask for the roll call.
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber, Councilmember Barber, Councilmember Barber,
Yes, are you not hearing me?
We did that time.
Okay. Sorry.
Councilmember Berenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Circo,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you all. The first reading passes unanimously, 8-0. So now we're going to take a little bit of a pause because in accordance with City Council rules and procedures, we do allow for public comment in between first and second reading of emergency bills. Mr. Eakey is going to monitor his email account to see if there are any public comments at this time, and so we'll pause for anyone that might have a comment they'd wish to pose to myself and the council at this time prior to proceeding. I will get back with you in about 2 minutes. Thank you all for your patience. Mr. Eki, have you received any public comments on this issue?
We have not, sir.
Thank you. He indicates that we have not, so we'll now move on. I'd entertain could I please have the second reading of Bill 3539 in its entirety?
The second reading of Bill 3539 in its entirety. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to declare a state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 virus and to institute the applicable provisions of Chapter 240 of the Raymore City Code of Ordinances and Chapter 44 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, and declaring this bill as an emergency. Whereas the President of the United States has declared a national emergency to contain the spread of the COVID-19 virus, thereby making every county, state, and city subject to emergency protocols and procedures. And whereas the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus has resulted in public health officials, including the Director of Public Health for Cass County, Missouri, to institute orders to decrease the spread of the virus. And whereas to support the efforts of the national, state, and local public health officials and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Raymore, including those citizens who belong to high-risk populations, the City Council finds that it is in the best interest to authorize the mayor to declare a state of emergency. And whereas if the mayor declares a state of emergency to contain the spread of the COVID-19 virus, the City Council finds that the mayor should be authorized to institute such measured, judicious, appropriate emergency management actions with the Emergency Management Director as provided for under Chapter 240 of the Raymore City Code and the applicable provisions of Chapter 44 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Raymore, Missouri. Section 1, Authority to declare emergency. To support the efforts of the national, state, and local public health officials and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Raymore against the spread and threat of the COVID-19 virus, the City Council does hereby delegate to the mayor the authority to declare an emergency within the state of Missouri, Raymore, Missouri, and institute reasonable measures as may be required to prevent, minimize, and repair injury and damage that may be caused by the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Section 2, Authority of Mayor and Emergency Management Director. In the event that the mayor shall declare an emergency under this delegation of authority, the City Council directs that the mayor, along with the Emergency Management Director, to implement measured, judicious, and appropriate emergency management actions as provided for under Chapter 240 of the Raymore City Code and the applicable provisions of Chapter 44 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri to limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus to the population of Raymore. Section 3, Termination of Authority. The authority of the mayor to declare an emergency and institute the actions authorized under Chapter 240 of the Raymore City Code and the applicable provisions of Chapter 44 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri shall terminate on April 30th, 2020, unless otherwise previously terminated, extended, expanded, or amended by action of the City Council. Section 4, Effective Date. The effective date of approval of this ordinance shall be coincidental with the mayor's signature and attestation by the city clerk. Section 5, Emergency Ordinance. The mayor hereby authorizes this ordinance to be read as an emergency to quickly address and respond to the public health concerns of the community. Section 6, Severability. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, or portion of this ordinance is for any reason held invalid or unconstitutional by any court of competent jurisdiction, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision, and such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions thereof. Duly read this first time, this 23rd day of March, 2020. Be it remembered that the above ordinance was approved and adopted this 23rd day of May, March 2020, by the following vote.
Thank you, Ms. Werner. With that, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman,
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3539, authorizing the mayor to declare a state of emergency.
thank you, sir. Is there a second?
This is Councilmember Barber.
Mr. Barber,
I will second the motion.
thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of this ordinance. Is there any further comment? Comment I would like to make is that we've been working very closely together here, myself and the staff, to make sure that we stay on top of this issue and have only done so with a lot of reflection on how it affects our businesses and the citizens of our community. I do not take this authority lightly. I work very closely with all the departments, to include Mr. Murdoch, our emergency management coordinator and director, and I promise you that I will respect your authority in every sense of the word. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, by roll call, please.
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber, Councilmember Berenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Circo,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I appreciate your vote of confidence, and we will now move on to the first reading of Bill 3533 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3533 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Dexter's Plumbing and Excavating, LLC, for the fire hydrant replacement project, City Project Number 20-348-501, in the amount of $101,715, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Eakey to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. The project before council includes the replacement of 16 non-operational fire hydrants at the locations shown on the attached map in your packet. Staff reviewed 6 bids for the fire hydrant replacement project on March 4th. Dexter's Plumbing and Excavating was determined to be the lowest and best bidder. Staff recommends the contract for the fire hydrant replacement project to be awarded to Dexter's Plumbing and Excavating in the amount of $101,715.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the first reading of Bill 3533.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman,
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3533, award of contract to Dexter's Plumbing and Excavating for the fire hydrant replacement project.
thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Mr. Barber,
I will second that motion.
thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3533. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Circo,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you all. The motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3537 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3537 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, decreasing water and sewer rates by 5% for the next 30-day period to encourage greater water usage in support of CDC guidelines during the COVID-19 outbreak, and in order to implement the reduction immediately, the mayor is authorized to declare this as an emergency.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. At its work session, at 2 work sessions ago, the City Council expressed its desire to temporarily reduce water and sewer rates for the current 30-day billing cycle by 5%. They are doing this to support the CDC guidelines for frequent washing of clothes, hands, and surfaces during the current COVID-19 outbreak. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Feuerborn. Any questions of staff? If there are no questions of staff, in accordance with the council rules and procedures, we allow for public comment in between the first and second reading of emergency bills. And I will again pause for a couple of minutes to see if Mr. Eakey gets any comments on this particular topic. Sorry, this is the first reading. So public out there listening, keep those comments in mind. I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item at this time.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3537, temporary reduction of water and sewer rates.
Thank you, sir. The motion's been made to approve the first reading of Bill 3537. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Mr. Barber.
I will second the motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3537. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Circo,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. Now, prior to the second reading of this emergency ordinance, I would give the public an opportunity to provide comment through Mr. Eakey, and I will pause at this time to give them an opportunity. Mr. Ike, have you received any comments?
I have not, sir.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and proceed with the second reading by Bill 3537 in its entirety.
The second reading of Bill 3537 in its entirety, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, decreasing water and sewer rates by 5% for the next 30-day period to encourage greater water usage in support of CDC guidelines during the COVID-19 outbreak, and in order to implement the reduction immediately, the mayor is authorized to declare this as an emergency. Whereas the City Council has taken immediate steps to support citizens during the COVID-19 outbreak, and whereas those steps have included not shutting off water sewer customers for non-payment of bills, reducing lobby traffic to provide for social distancing by permanently eliminating the fees for making online payments, canceling board and commission meetings, and imploring persons not to attend city council meetings and watch via remote video. And whereas the city council wishes to further support its citizens by reducing water and sewer rates for the current 30-day billing cycle during the outbreak by 5%, and whereas, unlike the other steps already taken by the mayor and council, the temporary reduction in water and sewer rates requires formal council action. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Raymore, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the city manager is instructed to implement a temporary 5% reduction in the water and sewer rates for the current billing cycle. Section 2, effective date. The effective date of approval of this ordinance shall be coincidental with the mayor's signature and attestation by the city clerk. Section 3, severability. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, or portion of this ordinance is for any reason held invalid or unconstitutional by any court of competent jurisdiction, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision, and such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions thereof. Section 4, emergency reading. In order to implement the reduction in rates immediately, the mayor hereby authorizes the passage of this ordinance as an emergency bill. Duly read this first time this 23rd day of March 2020. Be it remembered that the above ordinance was approved and adopted this 23rd day of March 2020 by the following vote.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman,
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3537, temporary reduction of water and sewer.
thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Yes, Mr. Barber.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first and second reading of Bill 3537. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber, Councilmember Barber, Councilmember Barber, Councilmember Berenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Serko,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
Mr. Barber, we did not get a clear indication. Could you repeat, please?
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay, yes. I'm not doing anything different. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. That maybe pause when you unmute or something for a few seconds is the only thing I can think of. But thank you, sir. So that item carries by unanimous vote, 8-0. We'll now move on to the next agenda item. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3538 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3538 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, updating and amending the city's administrative policy manual.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Eke to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Currently, the Administrative Policy Manual requires that all employees live within a 35-mile radius from city limits. As the city continues to grow, we also continue to attract talented applicants from across the Kansas City metropolitan region. Staff is recommending expanding the residency requirement to 70 miles to increase opportunities for others interested in applying to work for the City of Raymore.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of staff? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman,
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3538 and direct staff to amend the Administrative Policy Manual, Section 300.5, to increase the mileage limit for employees from 35 to 70 miles outside the corporate limits of Raymore.
thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Yes, Mr. Barber.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3538. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman,
Sir, at this time, I would like to move to amend my original motion by directing staff to amend the Administrative Policy Manual, Section 300.5, to entirely remove the mileage limitation so that it would read as follows. 300.5, residency requirement. City employees are allowed to live outside the corporate limits of the City of Raymore.
thank you, sir. Is there a second to that amended motion?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Mr. Barber,
I will second the amended motion.
thank you, sir. The motion's been made and seconded to amend Bill 3538 to remove the limitation on the outside the corporate city limits. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Holman from Ward 3 again.
Mr. Holman,
The reason I made the amended motion, sir, and I've stated this in work session, I believe that residency requirements are an outdated policy of the past. They were written before the days of cell phones, before the days of current electronic devices, memorandums of understanding, and agreements between cities to provide emergency services. I believe that whether or not an employee chooses to live at 80 miles or 15 miles away from the city really has no impact on his or her performance, and should attendance or tardiness become an issue, that is truly a management issue and not a policy discussion, sir.
thank you, sir. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, who is this?
this is Councilmember Townsend, Ward 1.
Mr. Townsend, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the amended motion that's before us, what impact does this have on the city manager's position?
The portion of policy that this particular item never had that portion of policy that requires the city manager to live within the city limits. That's actually under code and city charter, under the direction of the city manager. It's in those particular sections and not in the administrative policy manual that the city manager is required to live within the city limits. And I would not see this as changing that, and I would not recommend that.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn, for the clarification. I just want to make sure that that was understood.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Ms. Abdelgawad?
I just want to briefly express my opinion as I stated at the work session. Maybe my thinking is a little more old-fashioned when it comes to this, but I believe with kind of our motto of live, work, and play in Raymore, I feel like requiring people to live within a half an hour or so of the city encourages them to be more involved in city functions and support the city economically with their shopping. And so I see value in having our employees live in or near the city. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Mr. Barber?
Yes, in the work session, I supported not having mileage limits, and I'll briefly tell a quick story. I spoke with a business owner that has been a 40-year business owner in the city limits of Raymore. And when he first started in business, he hired his first employee, a young person that he was paying minimum wage, and because he was just getting started. And that person lived over in Wyandotte County. And he told that young man, he said, listen, I'm not paying you enough to drive all the way from Wyandotte County. And the employee said, with all due respect, sir, would you let me make that decision? And the end of that story is that he became his best employee. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Councilman Circo here.
Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I kind of look at the pros and the cons, and being a business owner for a long time and having staffing from different places. But sometimes, like Mr. Abdelgawad says, you know, if you're closer to the community you live in and love and support, it's a little bit more important. Sometimes if you have a restriction of miles to a certain point, it can be a given and not a problem. But if you extend it to anywhere, any time living, even though it would be on that individual to make sure they report to duty, sometimes if they're far away and they do a good job here, and what's happened in my business a number of times, they snatch them up with a little bit higher pay into the area that they live close to or in, actually, if they don't live here. Sometimes you could lose that potential person of good quality because they give a little bit more money, and instead of you're down the street 5 minutes out and giving you more money and you're really good at what we're looking for, sometimes that could come into play on the pros and the cons of that too. So I kind of understand where Mrs. Abdelgawad was coming from. So it's a kind of a slippery slope, yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Jacobson.
Mr. Jacobson?
Thank you, sir. I'll simply put it this way. I agree with this amendment for several reasons, but one in particular is Mr. Fairborn and his staff are highly skilled professionals that have years of experience in helping us make our decisions, as a matter of fact, and advising us when we have questions regarding things that we need to do in the city to improve that city. These kinds of skills, can be very challenging to find in one particular area. And frankly, I would feel that way if we were talking about a St. Louis or a Kansas City, who are still much bigger than us. It's very much I kind of use the analogy of a sports team. If you want to bring in top-notch performers for your team, then you need to make sure that you have a wide and deep pool to choose from. And I think while I certainly encourage, and I'm sure Mr. Fairborn and his staff will certainly look at people within the city of Raymore, at the end of the day, you got to go with with the best possible talent that's out there. And if they are 70 miles or further away from the city, then I think again, I'm going to refer to Mr. Fairborn here. I think he has
he should have the right, and his staff should have the right to hire people on. The second aspect of that also is perhaps we're talking about not necessarily department heads, but someone who works for the department heads, but someone who can then be moved up. I'm a big believer in a deep bench, if you will. And if you have talented performers from, further than 35 miles away, then I think, we should certainly take a hard look at hiring them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Burke here.
Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an excellent amendment. I think that we would be missing out on thousands of Raymore citizens that have been here for 10 to 20 years that weren't here for more than that. And I think that our city would be lessened had we not had those people move here for various reasons. Certainly, had the district had such a stipulation on employment, I wouldn't be here, and I probably would not have been to Raymore much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Councilman Circo again.
Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, again, like I said, I understand the pros and cons, and both sides have given a very good case. And I agree, my only little bit of fear was because I've lived that as a business owner with that happening, but it's very rare. And like Councilman Jacobson and Burke said, we do have our trust and faith in Mr. Pureborn. He makes great decisions. He understands what it takes. And we do have a great city and a great city of employees. So it speaks for itself. So I guess to reach out and get the best and the brightest sometimes that you need to get here, sometimes it could take a little bit of expansion of distance. But again, I'm just trying to voice that I understand both sides, and they're both very compelling. But I respect, again, the city, Mr. Pureborn, and what he'll do as the city manager, what he's done. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Pureborn does have a clarification at this time. I'd like to give him the mic.
Ms. Warner, I just want to make sure, do you need the council, I was noticing you were scrambling to get this down. Do you need Councilmember Holman to repeat the amended wording?
If I could repeat what I heard, and Councilmember Holman can clarify as to the correctness of the motion.
Thank you.
The motion was to amend policy section 300.5, where city employees are allowed to live outside the corporate limits of the city of Raymore.
This is Councilmember Holman. That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Jacobson.
Yes, Mr. Jacobson.
I have a question, and this is actually regarding protocol. Just for my clarification, it seemed like we made a motion and seconded on the first reading, and now we have a motion and a second, if I understand correctly, to amend the first reading. I'm just trying to make sure that we follow proper procedure in how we vote, because it feels like we have two motions on the table.
We do. We will
Is that
vote.
correct?
We will vote on the amendment first, and then if that passes, we will vote on the amended ordinance.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to hear, sir. Thank you.
You bet. Anyone else? If not, we have a motion on the floor to amend the first motion as stated by Ms. Warner, and that's what we'll be voting on at this time. We'll be voting on the amendment itself. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
No.
Councilmember Barber.
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Circo,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
The amendment passes 7 yes, 1 no. We'll now move on to the main motion to adopt this ordinance as amended. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
No.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Circo,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
First reading of Bill 3538 passes 7 yes, 1 no. We'll now move on to public comments, or excuse me, we've removed public comments from our agenda. We'll now move on to mayor-council communication. And this evening, I'll start off with Mr. Holman. I'll start with you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing that I would have to say is it's obvious that these are very trying times and unprecedented times for all of us. And when I say all of us, I mean everyone within the city limits and beyond. It's certainly times when even the strongest and bravest souls find themselves disheartened, maybe a little bit confused and worried or wondering about the future. I myself find my thoughts traveling that way when you see the constant negativity coming from the media, and I'm not saying that they are intending to do that, but when you get bombarded with the messages, it plays on one's soul, certainly. But I would remind everyone that we have a fantastic staff. I think the best staff that there is. And we have a fantastic city council, a board of individuals, to include the mayor, which have true heart and soul in caring for our citizens. And that no entity or organization or group of people in the history of the world was ever great by only going through good times. They all endured their forms of tragedy and depression. And we will get through this, and we will survive this. There will be tougher times after the pandemic has passed with the economic situation. We know this. But we will find a way to persevere, and we will come out of this at some point stronger than we were before. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just be really brief. I want to just take a moment to thank our city staff, our admin team, and of course you and fellow council members for your leadership during these trying times. And there's lots of criticism out there, and so I just wanted to take a moment to give you all a thank you and pat on the back for all of your hours you've spent learning about what's happening and making decisions about what we should do as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to echo the comments of my peers on the council and kind of also take it to another level to those at the top of the organizational chart, which is the residents of Raymore, and ask them to appreciate their patience as everyone, not only within the city of Raymore, but at the county level and externally, who are reacting really as well as they can to the evolving situation, and their calmness as they understand the information that's being put out and how they should operate under this new health order that has been put out. To the staff and to yourself, Mr. Mayor, and the city manager and all of those involved in getting us to where we are today, I truly appreciate it. It's definitely been a very challenging point for all of us, as the information is changing every day and every hour to some extent. But I appreciate all the efforts everyone has put in towards this. And again, I go back to those residents who have been listening or reviewing the recording. Some point throughout the day, turn the TV off. Take time for yourself. You're in the house with your family and friends. Enjoy this time. Turn off the Wi-Fi. Pick up Monopoly game. Pick up some cards or something, and enjoy this time together. We're being forced to have because you don't know when it'll happen again on a more positive level. But turn the negative into a positive and enjoy this time with your family. Again, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Mr. Barber?
And I concur with all my fellow councilmen on what is said. And I certainly applaud staff being proactive with the water reduction rate last week, discussing it. Certainly we were being looking ahead. We obviously, none of us have ever been through anything like this before. And I pray we never have to go through anything like this again. So there's a lot of new things that are coming forth. Mayor, I commend you on your leadership. And as Mr. Holman said, I trust you, and this city trusts you. We also have, I want to do a shout out for our citizens that are stepping up. I was contacted this week with a person that was doing various things to help the effort. I know we have folks that are delivering, getting things for people, helping people with various things. Our citizens are helping each other, which I think is tremendous, and I encourage that to continue, and I know it will continue. And I know of everything that they have to worry about on their mind, the one thing they don't have to worry about is how this city is run. So I do, again, Mr. Fairborn, I appreciate your staff and everything that they do. And if there's anything that I can do to help, and probably as has been said by the county, the best thing to do that helps is stay home and stay out of the way. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jacobson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I don't have anything any different than what my fellow council members have said, and I'll simply say to them, I really appreciate the passion with which they said it. I feel the same way. I will say that I know these times can be challenging for everyone's, and I have actually, I've seen on some of the social media, I know there has been some criticism, but I've been seeing a lot of neighbors offering to help others during these times. And then the other thing I would say is I understand how challenging it can be for you, sir, and for Mr. Fairborn and his staff. These are difficult decisions to make. The emergency readings that we're having this evening are not common. And empowering you, sir, with being able to declare a state of emergency, I will tell you, or city of emergency, I will tell you this, I have full confidence, as Mr. Holman mentioned earlier, and you guys, I know it's difficult. These are difficult decisions. It changes hour by hour and day by day. And I want you to know that all of you have my full confidence. And as Councilman Barber said earlier, if there's anything I can do, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I come at this from a little different perspective. I studied genetics in 1988 at MU, and because of that, I've looked at these things in a little different manner. So I was really kind of concerned a couple weeks ago with the level at which our country, the world, was dealing with this. But I will say that now, in the last week, so many positive steps have been taken at all levels, federal, state, and local municipality, that I'm pretty at ease with a lot of optimism that, you know, my fellow humans are going to use their freedom to do the right thing. They are doing the right thing to help each other, to help the elderly and the most at risk. So I'm very pleased with that. And that's our citizens, and I want to thank them. I want to thank the city staff And it may take us several weeks to get through this. I mean, if you really study virology in this and you look at the sequence that it's going to take, we're going to be dealing with this for a while, but eventually we will see the class of 2020. It may be in a football stadium, it may be somewhere, but we will celebrate our class of 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to echo the comments that my colleagues mentioned with thanking yourself and the rest of city staff and even the rest of council. It's easy for somebody, the citizens in our town, to watch this meeting and not really see the activity that's going on. I know yourself and a lot of the city staff has spent countless hours working with our local partners, county officials, state officials, even federal officials. So I want to thank you for the hours and the time you put in and the hard work and determination you put in to keep us all safe. I want to thank the citizens of this town. I think Mr. Jacobson said he noticed, a lot of neighbors taking care of each other, and I've seen the same thing too. And it's just one of the many things that makes me proud to live in this town. I think we're a unique town and full of people that genuinely care for each other a great deal. And one final thing, I know we can't do this in a large scale right now, but if you're able to and you feel safe doing so, please support your local businesses in Raymore. And when we all get through this, whether it be a few weeks or a few months, let's each and every one of us try to do what we can to really support those businesses and even those neighbors that need help. We're going to get through this, but we're going to do it together. So, again, thank you, everybody, for your help, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll kind of chime in on our city council members, the city, our staff. You guys are doing a great job through a very horrible time, a time where we're not really accustomed to, never been in. Very tough times. The city is doing very well. Again, like I reach out to you, our state reps like Mr. Havner, Mr. Bonin, they're ready to take the helm and work with the city officials to get through these hard times with you. They're really excited as soon as we can get some finances, some things coming in to reach out to you guys to help our little businesses. Like I said before, they're ready to do that, so we can get ahead of that a little bit, hopefully in praying. I tell people to pray. I'm a big Christian man. I pray. God has a plan. There's a plan. Sometimes mercy is not getting what you deserve. Who knows what we deserve or not in life, but God's full of mercy and full of grace, and He just pray every day. He understands our needs, but He likes to hear from people. If you're a Christian, get up every day and pray. Pray at night. Always talk to God through Jesus Christ. But what I do every day, I pray for the city of Raymore. I always pray for the city, the people, and primarily the staffing in our city government to get us through another day and lead us into the future. I have a lot of faith. I know God loves us as a very blessed city. I feel very blessed to be in it, and the people in it are great. You can reach out to your friends and family. You're healthy. Go to the store, pick up things for the elderly who might have some medical problems. Don't let them get out. Work with them. I think we need to all work together if possible in your neighborhoods. It's a great thing. And thank you very much. And I pray for the city. I pray for each and every one of you and your families in this city for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Circo. And for my comments this evening, I'd like to first thank you for all of you for your kind comments about the work that we've been doing up here at City Hall. And I thank you for your courage to serve in these tough times. And thank you for your flexibility this evening and the due diligence that you put into tonight's agenda to make sure that the work of the city government is getting completed. This is an unprecedented time. It takes a lot of effort to stay engaged, to stay nimble, and I really do appreciate all of you for the work that you've done this evening and all along. It's great working with that team of elected officials, and it really is my honor. It's also been my honor over the past couple of weeks to work with the department heads and staff that I get to work with on a daily basis. Their work ethic their level of intelligence, their level of dedication to this job is just, I mean, it's hard to measure it, to be honest with you. I come in here, I talk to Mr. Fearborn on the phone, I come in here and we interact in closed-door sessions to ensure that we get these comments and information from other communities to ensure that we're all on the same song sheet. Our regional efforts have been just absolutely wonderful. I know we've received some criticism lately because we didn't act as what they're calling the Core Four, but we're actually on the same timeline as them. We were being a little more prudent with our moving forward on this, not only to ensure the medical health of our community, but the economic health of our community as well. And we want to make sure that all levels of health within our city are taken care of. And so I want to thank our citizens for their patience, thank our businesses for their patience as well as we move through this minefield that is really something that we haven't experienced in our lifetimes. They may have experienced it in 1918 when the flu came back with our soldiers from World War I. But it really is an unprecedented time, and I'm just proud to serve as your mayor. And again, I thank you for your kind words and your due diligence that you continued to serve in the capacity that you do. So thank you all. That concludes my comments for this evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Holman from Ward 3.
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I move that we adjourn this March 23rd, 2020 meeting of the Raymore City Council.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Barber.
Mr. Barber.
I will second the motion.
Thank you, sir. The motion's been made and seconded to adjourn this meeting. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes.
Councilmember Barber,
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Circo,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
And as Mr. White, the Jackson County executive, said yesterday, stay strong, stay safe, and stay at home. Thank you all.